So I'm Mika again. I'll talk a bit about some friends of mine in Egypt, and then also about how the crackdown in Egypt relates to things here in London. So I work for Platform, which is a London-based organisation that mostly aims to bring down the London-based oil companies, BP and Shell, and the kind of colonial imperial structures associated with them. There's various reports in the mailing list over there. One that I wrote on Egypt, and some other stuff on Algeria, on Britain, Europe's gas grab, and also the connections between institutions like universities, like SOAS and other universities, and oil companies and structures like that. How does that relate to Egypt? I've been based in Egypt for around the last 3 years. My work is supporting social movements, frontline communities, people who are using the space created by the revolution to defend their rights, defend their livelihoods, say they want to live differently. Obviously that means that right now a lot of my friends are in jail, which also makes it particularly strange being here this summer. And I think this connects a bit to the despondency question. How do you deal psychologically on a day-to-day basis when more and more of your friends are being rounded up and put away? Quite a few of them got mentioned by everyone here before. Like I worked quite a lot with Mehi Noor, because Mehi Noor is quite amazing, because as well as supporting workers and fisherfolk and farmers and people being imprisoned and everybody affected by the crackdown, she's also thinking long-term, how will climate change Egypt in the next 10 to 20 years, and how do we need to fundamentally change things, not just right now. And I think sometimes when we do our Free Mehi Noor's, Free Aleh campaigns, we should put them on pedestals because they're amazing, but we need to remember we need to free all the political prisoners. But also, these are people just like us. They're organisers and activists, and if we'd had the revolution, those people being cracked down on and sent to jail would be those of us in the room right here. And yes, they're inspiring, but they're also people who go out and get a drink. Saneh, Aleh's younger sister, who's in the family, there's Aleh and Mona and Saneh. Saneh's the youngest, and she wasn't really political when the revolution started. Of course she was political, her family was political, but she wasn't that active. Of course, once the revolution started, she couldn't avoid becoming active, and very quickly was out on the streets all night. You'd bump into her at 3 AM in the middle of a tear gas cloud. But she's also a kid, was a kid. Now she's no longer a kid, but she's still young, and she's also now languishing in jail and being put away. Or Yara, who's Yara Salem. She's an amazing activist. She is out there on the street, but my main memory of her is I go into the office and she's sitting at the computer next to me, looking at Facebook or writing reports or checking her emails. She spends most of her day, 8 hours a day, sitting in front of a computer, probably like a lot of people in this room. And again, now she's being put away. And I think we need to, somehow for me, it's quite important that we realize that supporting these people isn't something we can forget about, because they've got real lives. And we need to stop the counter-revolution so those people can get out, both for their own lives and for the sake of longer-term liberation. Now, okay, how do we pressure the Egyptian government? And how do we defend the revolution? And how do we do that in a way that doesn't give legitimacy to institutions that actually we wouldn't necessarily want to? So, for example, Mehi has said repeatedly, do solidarity, build opposition, but don't let the Americans get away with claiming that they're liberators. Right? We need to recognize that the Brits don't care about human rights. We know that. Look what's happening in Gaza right now, look what's happening in Iraq. Look at the Americans' long-term role in supporting the regime. We need to use all the tools that exist while recognizing that ultimately supporting the revolution in Egypt is about challenging the connections between power here and power in Egypt. And it's those relationships that really are about breaking, which means we need to ask ourselves, who's profiting here from the counter-revolution? Right? Who is the counter-revolution beneficial to in London? And for example, BP is the largest foreign investor in Egypt, has been for a very long time. Day before yesterday, Egypt, there's big headlines, Sisi signed a new deal. So Sisi signed a deal, $10 billion deal with BP. There's a backstory to that. BP signed the deal in 2000. Then they renegotiated in 2009, complete rip-off deal. Mubarak could have been corruption behind the scenes. Maybe they just had terrible negotiators, but they basically let BP take over vastly greater profits than they did before. This is for the North Alexandria field. The gas was going to come on shore next to a town called Idku, which is just east of Alexandria, where Minio, in fact, has also done lots of work. The people there, they were like, no, we don't really want a gas plant, because next to our town, we've already got a large one belonging to BG, also a British company. Why should this other foreign multinational come in, destroy our fishing, destroy our guava trees, make loads of money, and it doesn't actually benefit Egypt? So the folks in Idku mobilized, they occupied the highway, they did a sit-in on the site where BP was going to construct the gas plant. They smashed up the BP car too, they stole some BP computers, stopped construction for 6 months, for a year, for 18 months. It was in the context of the wider revolution. They could say, no, we don't want this happening to us. And BP couldn't operate. I also know one of the BP staff, and he was like, yeah, we couldn't go there anymore. They didn't want us there. And in the end, BP conceded. Okay, people in Idku don't want us. What shall we do? Well, BP, Idku is in the Behera or Hafiza governorate. The governor in Kafashif, the next governor, seems to be a bit more repressive. Maybe we'll move just across the border and see if we can work with him. And maybe now that Morsi's in government, we'll build a close relationship with the Brotherhood, and they can dampen down opposition. So that's what they tried to do. Decided to build in a village called Bourg Merezel instead. Obviously the people in Bourg Merezel were like, no, we don't want this here either, thank you very much, we're going to protest, we'll take to the streets, we'll stop you. And BP ended up not building there either. 2 years, 3 years, they haven't got any further. And just on Tuesday, BP was back in Cairo, and Sisi gets his wonderful headline, $10 billion coming to Egypt. Of course, it's the same headline that Morsi had in 2012, then it was $11 billion for some reason. Mubarak had it as well for $13 billion. But that's a London-based company. And not only are they supporting Sisi's regime, but they're also ripping off Egypt's resources. That should work. Same time, you've got, there's a big push in Egypt by the government to switch to using coal. Egypt doesn't really use coal at the moment. Coal, sure, we know a lot about climate change impacts on coal, but also very directly, if you start using massive coal consumption in power plants, you're going to have 10, 20, 30,000 more Egyptians dying every year from health impacts. Egypt also doesn't have any coal. It's not like a local source. Egypt has vast amounts of solar on here. What are the Brits doing? They're lobbying to expand the ports. There you go. That might not seem connected, except if Egypt needs to import the coal, they're going to be importing it through the ports. And there's a lot of big British port building companies. They want to profit. They want to benefit. What's the British government do? It's lobbying the Egyptian government to do that. And we've got financial institutions who also try and shift stuff on a wider basis. There's a public bank, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. They got set up in the 90s to force privatization down the throat of the former Soviet Union and the East Bloc. Now, in the context of the uprisings across North Africa, they're trying to force privatization down the throat of Egypt, Tunisia, Jordan, didn't even have a revolution, and Libya. And they're pouring in hundreds of millions of dollars, pounds and euros, into Egypt, some for privatization projects, some for energy projects, some for road projects. None of them are democratically accountable to the Egyptian people. All of them are about ensuring private interests for foreign companies and for certain elites in Egypt. The EBRD is on Bishopsgate. If you come out of Liverpool Street Station, you go left, it's right there. That's their global headquarters. The generals are sitting in Cairo. And sure, we know a lot, yeah, they're getting a lot of support from Saudi. They're getting support from the Emirates. That's crucial support for them. But they also get a lot of support from London. A lot of the finance that comes to them, their wages that get paid, the political acceptability, the cover for their corruption, things will change. But crucially, that battle needs to be led by people in Egypt. But that battle will also be fought here. And we should remember, I talked to Mendy 10 days before she handed herself, before she went to the court where she then got jailed. And she said, yeah, Sisi is really scary. It is, obviously. It's incredibly depressing at the moment. But I'm optimistic because we don't have a choice. We have to be optimistic. We will win and we have to win. So we have to be hopeful then. There's just no option to that.